Hello and a warm welcome to all of you from the UNIDO Chemical Leasing team here in Vienna. So we are sitting around the table, Petra Schwager, Luis Umansor, Wojtka Sadric, Franko Tuncic, Daniel and Thomas that assist us for technical questions and for potential problems with audio or video. My name is Reinhard Joas and I will do the moderation for this first module. We will have in about 2 hours then a second module which will follow after a short break after the first module. So what will you learn from this first module? What will be the content? The basic idea is to make you familiar with the core elements of chemical leasing. That means how it works, what are the benefits, who is involved, how is the pricing going, what is the specialty of chemical leasing. So we will do this by introducing to you step by step the key elements of these performance-based business models. And in particular, we will also show you many case studies and experiences we have gained during the last 15 years where chemical leasing was implemented on a global level in many countries and in many industry sectors. This will be the main intention of this session. In addition, we will give you some overview information about the Chemical Leasing Award 2020, where application is now open, and where you find and where you get some basic information how to generate your personal success story for this Chemical Leasing Award. Further detail of the different award categories, how to apply, what data you have to provide will then follow in the second module, as I mentioned, in about 2 hours. The idea is that this webinar is based on some presentations where the team here shows to you these key elements, the key findings, but you're always invited to ask any questions you might have. You can use the chat function for this, and we will see if some questions are direct related to a session. We will try to answer them immediately after the session. Otherwise, we will collect the questions at the end of this module. We will have time to answer all the questions as far as they concern the content of this module. If there are further questions or questions that go more detailed into specific aspects, you will receive an answer via email. And this is also an invitation if you have any questions after the webinar or in the coming days. Don't hesitate to send your questions to UNIDO, and we have a hotline, we have an expert team here, and will provide answers then on open issues, whatever might occur. For the organization of this section, we also have foreseen, in case you have any problems, you cannot hear or you cannot see the slides, just use the chat function and our technical experts will try to provide you help. I hope everybody can understand this introduction well. Otherwise, don't hesitate and write immediately. Then we can solve potential problems as soon as possible. If there are no more points, I don't see any urgent problems popping up. So I hope that everything is then going well. We will start with the presentations, and the logic is that Petra will give you now the general overview about circular economy and put chemical leasing in the context of circular economy, highlighting also the policy dimension behind and the concrete added value chemical leasing and performance-based business model can generate for these upcoming policy lines and for the needs for companies to make them fit for the future. So Petra, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning. We are just going to change to the presentation mode and then we can start. Yeah. Are we in the presentation mode? Yeah. Very good. So thanks again for being with us today. It's a pleasure to share with you some of the highlights on chemical leasing and to start with on what's the link between chemical leasing and circular economy. Let me just give you a brief introduction to UNIDO. UNIDO is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. We have our headquarters in Vienna. We have 170 member states. We were founded in '66, and our main mandate is to bring forward inclusive and sustainable industrial development, which is reflected in the Sustainable Development Goal number 9, which also talks about innovation, again a subject very much linked to chemical leasing, and infrastructure. Why is the UN organization promoting industrial development? It is a way of fighting against poverty, creating jobs, creating employment, but all this, of course, has to be done in a sustainable and environmentally sound and socially, of course, sound manner. What does UNIDO do? We offer technical cooperation, and within the Department of Technical Cooperation is also the Chemical Leasing program embedded in the, especially my department, in the Environment Department. We also provide advice on policy. We have advised many countries on industrial policies, on innovation policies. We also provide support on quality and normative issues. And of course, partnerships. Partnerships, especially with the private sector, are crucial to us. And the Chemical Leasing program was evaluated a few years ago as one of the best programs of UNIDO for partnering with the private sector and industry. So just a few words on UNIDO. In 2004, we initiated the Chemical Leasing program as part of our resource efficiency program, which at that time was called Cleanup Production. So let me just go one step further and see why we need chemical leasing and why we need circular economy. Situation today is what we call a linear economy. We extract raw materials, and in 2017 we extracted 90 billion tons. We use them as a product, and then very often we just throw it away. In 2016, that resulted in 2 billion tons of municipal waste. But it seems maybe little, but this is only the waste that is registered. In most of the developing and also transition countries, waste is not deposited in a regular manner. It's not deposited or treated on official sites. So very often, and this is also one of the reasons maybe why we find the plastics all over in the oceans, because it's just not collected in a wise manner and organized manner. Predictions for 2050 are extraction of 180 billion tons, which would nearly double the waste amount. So this is a situation that would demand from us 2 or twice the size of our Earth, and we just simply do not have this. So we have to find ways of decoupling economic, social growth, well-being from the amount of resources that we are using. And when we talk about resources, this is water, energy, raw material. And yeah, and this is also what we need for the chemicals production. And we are talking about today, 0.74 kilos of waste every day per person, which is an enormous amount. So what can we do? At the same time, I wanted to bring this slide to your attention, which is the chemical production growth forecast. In 2014, and it's one of the biggest sectors at the global level, in some of the countries it is the biggest sector for the country. We had sales of $3.2 trillion. These sales are predicted to double in 2030. In addition to this, we see a shift from industrial countries to countries in transition, countries in developing countries. So what does this mean? How can we make this production, this income growth more sustainable? We know that we have 2 billion people entering the mid-income class by 2025. That means more demand for products, more demand for new services that require resources. How can we decouple this? How can we make more income, generate also more well-being with less inputs, with less resources? So how can we make this shift? How can we find new ways of doing so? I'm sorry. In addition, and coming back to chemicals use and consumption and production patterns, I wanted to bring your attention to the Sustainable Development Goal number 12. Mind you, out of the 17 goals that we are having, there is no single goal only on sustainable chemicals use. It is embedded in the Sustainable Goal number 12. And I just would like to read out the point 12.4 because we are now there. It's not that we're talking about 2030, it's 2020 that we want to achieve environmental sound management of chemicals and all waste throughout their life cycle in accordance with agreed international frameworks and significantly reduce their release to air, water and soil to minimize adverse impacts on human health and the environment. In October, the International Conference on Chemical Management will take place in Bonn, and that will also be the occasion when we will have our award ceremony. At this conference, we will get the exact update on where we are standing at the moment with this, with the achievements of this SDG. And this will also be the time when the international framework and there is this SICHEM process, Sustainable Approach to International Chemicals Management, will celebrate, will be revised for the next 10 years. So 2020 will see SICHEM plus 2020, which is the international framework that is mentioned here. In addition, of course, we have frameworks like Stockholm Convention, Basel Convention, and Rotterdam Convention. So this is a goal. The Sustainable Development Goals are an obligation of all countries around the globe to contribute, to contribute to its achievement. And there is a clear mandate on looking into environmental sound management of chemicals. One way of addressing this overconsumption of resources is the circular economy. Circular economy and in the program of the European Union was first presented in 2015, then 2016. And what is circular economy? Circular economy is a shift towards a systematic change. It includes, on one hand, more efficient use of resources, and on the other hand, a recovery. For me, coming from resource efficiency, it is really bringing these both parts together and close the cycles. So this is why you see here, you want to have products that you can repair, reuse, you want to have remanufacture, and of course, at the end, also to recycle. So there are different ways. On one hand, reduce the inputs, but also prolong the duration of the product use and all this. Through a better design of products, or in the design of a product, 70% of its potential for remanufacturing or reuse are embedded. So you have to think about this already from the start. And I think this is also what you will see when we talk about the chemical leasing. This is always the approach. From the start, make it better. And this circular approach, which then eventually also, sorry, I forgot, on the right-hand side, you see the waste to energy is also part of the circular economy. And this stands in opposition to the linear approach that we have seen before, where you just use maybe a product once and then you throw it away. In order to achieve this, an essential part are new business models, circular economy business model. And in the case of chemical leasing, it is really, this is what's called at the moment, or the big title that we have at the moment, product as service or performance-based business models. What are the present circular economy business models? There are different categories. I have just extracted maybe the 5 most relevant ones, and where I also see a linkage to circular economy, which would be clearly allocated directly in the last part, where you have product as service. But what we also want to inspire with chemical leasing is to work with renewable, recycled and biodegradable resources. It's not a must, but if it's possible, we encourage this. Recover energy or resources from the waste or byproducts. In many of the chemical leasing programs, we have also recovery of waste. It is not a precondition, but it is often the case. Extending the product life cycle and components repair, renovate, resale in the market. We also see a link there to our chemical leasing. And the shared use of platforms, I think this is a way, for me, this is more an instrument that facilitates the other business models. Because if I have, for example, you have companies now that are renting clothes or renting out equipment. And if you can do this then with the consumer on the internet platforms, it's just easier. Car sharing has never been so easy as it is now. Apartment sharing, Airbnb is also one of these typical shared use platforms that are growing and growing. And where we also see a big potential for smaller companies and for startup companies, not just for big companies. Coming to the last and the most relevant business model for chemical leasing, which is product as a service, where we really orient our approach on the service provision. Very often in chemical leasing, which is a business model from a business to business, it's not with the final client, it is between business partners. It can involve 2 or 3 or more business partners. It is about what I want to achieve with the chemical. And nobody wants to buy chemicals, or very often people don't understand that the glue is a chemical. It's not just a chemical, but it's the whole composition of a product like glue or paint or decreasing substances, solvents. We all want to have the performance of it, and this is the key element of chemical leasing. And what we do here, we put a price tag on the performance. So if I can just give you an example. Let's say there is a company, a powder coating company that provided before, in a normal business model, it provides the powder to the user. The chemical supplier provides the powder to the user, makes his or her business income the more you sell, the more of the product you sell, the more you get as an income. On the other hand, you have the motivation of the chemical user that would like to see less products, because these are costs to be used in his or her process. In a chemical leasing, we say, okay, what do you want to achieve with the powder coating? We want to have a certain area of surface covered and powder coated. So we say, okay, this is, we put a price tag on this one, and all the business relation will be about this performance. And the effects of this are, and I must say, when we started this in 2004, we didn't think that it would go so far, because it really has a large impact. First, chemicals become from a factor of earning are becoming a factor of cost for the provider. Using less chemicals is now in the interest of the supplier and of the user. The supplier has an incentive of bringing in innovation. She would never do this if they would just sell the quantity. But now it's a kind of know-how they are selling. They're bringing in additional know-how. It's also very much linked to this close cooperation. In a chemical leasing product, you have normally longer contracts and a closer business cooperation, and so on and so on. So again, the performance is in the middle, and this is also with our upcoming award, which you will learn more about later, is we focus on chemical leasing, but we will also include other performance-based business models for chemicals management. In a nutshell, chemical leasing towards circular economy, less is more. So this is what I mentioned before, interests of supplier and user are aligned. We also, and this is a specific contribution of chemical leasing, we have a detoxing of the material flow. Circular economy so far looks more on the quantity reduction, but it doesn't address so much the detoxification, and this is an additional value added of chemical leasing as a contribution to circular economy. So less hazardous chemicals. We really encourage, if there is a hazardous chemical, replace it by a less hazardous one. We will learn later on how chemical leasing can facilitate this process, even though more efficient, less hazardous chemical is more expensive than the previous one. Chemical leasing can facilitate its transition into the market because it's performance-based payment. We have less negative effects on health and safety, less risks. We have a shared responsibility and more incentives for reuse and recycling. And very much, which is really the flavor of the day and of the future, is this more innovation. So all in this short introduction to also outline these linkages between circular economy and chemical leasing. Chemical leasing is part of circular economy, and as an additional value add, it brings in this detoxifying of the material flow, and of course it's a product service business model. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Petra, for this introduction and also for setting the scene and the wider political field. I think after your presentation, everybody is now curious to learn about the details. How does this really work, this business model? How is this implemented in concrete cases? And what is really, you brought the figures for this worldwide development and these threatening developments if we don't do anything. And so what is the answer of chemical leasing, case by case, step by step? And for this, Branko, it's your turn now. You will give us this introduction. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Reinhard. You already heard about some features of chemical leasing, and I will now explain what are the key elements of chemical leasing. As Reinhard said, we will talk about unit of payment. We will touch upon a little bit about the processes which are suitable, and I will give you some practical examples to see how chemical leasing is really working in practice. On this first slide, this is a continuation of previous talk. On the left-hand side, you have a conventional business model, which is in reality, it's a linear business model. And to be honest, most of the companies and most of business is done in this traditional way, where when you sell more, the chemicals or some other stuff, you are increasing your profit by selling more products. And this is becoming more and more unsustainable because, as you see, in 2050, we will have to extract 180 billion tons of raw materials in order to make all the stuff around us. That's why more and more people are seeing that it is unsustainable and shifting to performance-based business model where you can improve and increase your profit by selling services instead of product. And in this case, as we are talking about chemical leasing, we are talking about selling performance instead of quantity of chemicals. This slide, you already saw it. What is chemical leasing? As we said, traditional business model, which is, I repeat, now used by a lot of companies still, in not only in chemical industry. Let's concentrate on chemicals and related industries. In traditional business model, a chemical supplier is selling quantity of chemicals, tons of salts, tons of paints, tons of powder coating, tons of glue, etc. But if the partners agree on selling the benefits of the chemical, then we are talking about chemical leasing. Let's discuss a little bit why it's called chemical leasing, because I know that there will be a lot of questions. Reinhard can explain it a little bit better. In the beginning, it started really as a chemical leasing, as a leasing of chemical. Why it's called leasing? Nobody wants to have a chemical, to own the chemical. Why we are buying chemicals in industry, also in our home? We are buying it because we want this chemical to do some job for us. We are not interested to have 200 tons of some solvent. We want this solvent to do something for us. That's why we are saying by chemical leasing, we are outlining and we are emphasizing that we are selling performance. So you see here that the chemical supplier provides chemicals and know-how to the chemical user, and the chemical user is not paying anymore for the quantity of chemicals, but it pays rather for the performance of this chemical. For example, we can speak about number of cleaned pieces, in this case tubes, clean parts, square meters of painted or protected surface, or number of boxes glued. You will hear later about practical examples, because now worldwide we have more than few hundred, maybe even few thousand cases where the chemicals are sold according to chemical leasing business model, performance-based business model. And this is leading, when we put the partners in this position to sign a contract based on the performance of chemicals, in most of the cases it leads to dramatic decrease of consumption of chemicals, but not only a decrease, but we can say broadly that it leads to more efficient use of chemicals. We can substitute toxic chemicals by less toxic. We can even sometimes substitute chemicals at all. We can use something else, but in the broader term, it leads to more efficient use of chemicals. You already saw this slide, but it's worth repeating it, that in a traditional business model, which is now mainstream model in most of the industries, you as a seller, a supplier, you are motivated to sell more chemicals. We know that in the contracts of sales managers, there is always their salary is connected to the volume of sales. And that's why they want to sell as much chemicals as they can, sometimes knowing that they're overselling chemicals and that their customer are overusing those chemicals, but they are not motivated to change anything, to share their knowledge, to show their customer how this chemical can be used more efficiently. Of course, on the other side, user is interested to have to use as little as possible chemicals, because for him this is a cost, and he doesn't know how to use this chemical in more efficient way without help of the supplier. If we put the same partners in a new contractual position where the unit of payment is no more quantity but the performance, then it changes everything. Then the supplier is very motivated to share its knowledge with the user in order to decrease or to decrease the quantity of chemicals used or to use them more efficiently. Why? Petra already said, because now with the unit of payment which is related to performance, he's not earning on quantity, he's now earning on performance, and that's why he pushed his user to use chemicals more efficiently, and now you have both motivations which are going to the same direction, and it creates so-called win-win situation where both of them are winning economically, and environment is also winning because we are using less chemicals or we are using those chemicals more efficiently. There are some slides of the examples of implementation which are from practice, and some of them and most of them are still up and running. In a classical business model, in the case of powder coating, user is paying for tons of powder, and then he is doing the best he can by spraying this powder coating on the parts, and his supplier is not interested to tell him where he makes a mistake. If they switch to the payment per square meter of coated surface, then the supplier is interested to share its knowledge with the user and to decrease consumption of chemicals, because he's interested in perfectly protected square meter, not how much of paint I put on the square meter. The other example is the solvents which are used in, for example, beverage industry, where normally beverage production company is buying solvents per tons, and they are using it, again, the best they can, but they are not specialists for cleaning, they are specialists to produce beverage. If they sign the contract, for example, per hectoliter of beverage which is produced, then the supplier works together with the user and they find a way how to use this solvent more efficiently, sometimes to change the solvent, sometimes to modify the process. To summarize this first part, just to repeat that what are the benefits and what are the roles of different partners here. User does not pay to own the chemical. That's why we are saying that it's called chemical leasing. They are just leasing this chemical to do the job, and he spends money for the benefits provided by chemical. Producer now is not selling the quantity of chemical, not selling tons of paint, tons of glue, tons of solvents, but they're selling performance, number of pieces cleaned, square meters of coated surface, number of boxes glued, number of working hours of conveyor. And now they can include intelligently into a price the know-how which was not really possible before in traditional business model, and then they lower the risk. Amount of chemicals, normally in our experience, it drops dramatically in the first few months or years of application of the chemical leasing business model. But what is also important, due to this continuous cooperation between the partners, it steadily goes down until some innovation comes. Maybe they can replace the chemical totally. And we are talking about business model. We cannot just talk about environment. This is really important for us. In the last few months, we know all that our planet is really at risk, but in order that the business model is sustainable, both partners or several partners, they have to have economic interest. And you see, if we are decreasing consumption of chemicals or we are increasing efficiency of use of chemicals, we are creating some added value. And in order that this business model is sustainable and this arrangement between the partners is sustainable, both partners have to earn something. And this added value, which is creating more efficient use of chemicals, will be shared in a fair way among the partners. And that's really a condition for the contract to be extended over longer periods. On this slide, I'd like to show you in practice. This will look a little bit incredible, but this is even underestimation of the potential of a classical and practical business case we are already doing. On the left-hand side, we are here on this slide. We are now trying to explain how money can be made by selling less chemicals. This is an example of chemical producer. Let's assume that the chemical producer is selling solvents for cleaning of metal parts. What is missing, I saw it late, but what is missing, we are talking about 2 million pieces which are cleaned, and this is missing on this slide, and I'm sorry that you cannot see it here. And for this chemical suppliers is selling 100 tons of solvents to its customer to clean 2 million parts, 2 million tubes, for example. And in order to do it in a traditional business model, to produce 100 tons, he needs $80,000 US to buy raw materials, to pay energy for all variable costs, and he has $10,000 US of fixed cost. So it looks fine for him in traditional business model. He makes $10,000 US by making 100,000 US dollars turnover, which is 10% profit, which is really nice for this model. But he knows that his client is not using this solvent in the most efficient way. And then, in some way, they get in contact, probably by some consultant or UNIDO, international organization, somebody who knows about that, and they say, why don't you sign a contract which is not based on the quantity but on performance? And what is important for you who are going to implement this chemical leasing in practice, you have to first study this left-hand side of the slide to see what's the present situation, to establish the baseline. So if we remember that we are speaking about 2 million tubes, 2 million parts, which are cleaned by $100,000, so we are around roughly 5 cents per tube. So that's the baseline situation. The specialists from both partners, they talk and they say, we can decrease the consumption, and for the user, we can offer you now not to sell you $1 per kilo, but we will sell you 4 cents. You will pay for us 4 cents for each clean part, for each clean tube. As we are talking now about 2 million tubes, the user will have to pay $80,000 US. But where is the trick? The chemical supplier knows, he has know-how, how to clean 2 million tubes with the same quality, but only with 60 tons of solvents. And maybe you will not believe it, but even in reality, it's even more in some cases, and I believe that my colleagues will present those cases from real life where we decrease the consumption. I will show later the slide where the consumption is decreased dramatically. So in order to produce 60 tons now, not 100 tons, our supplier needs only $48,000 US for raw materials, for energy, etc., variable cost. Let's assume that the fixed costs are the same, and now he makes, in blue you see, he makes $22,000 US dollar net profit by selling less chemicals, making less turnover. But you see now it's more than 35% now profit rate. So by decreasing consumption of chemicals and doing the same job, our chemical producer, chemical supplier, made 12,000 US dollars more than before. Even before his business was good, now it's excellent and it's really sustainable. By working together, they can even decrease more. Of course, for the chemical user, the same case. It's very straightforward. Before, in traditional business model, he was buying 100 tons and paying 100,000 US dollars. He didn't know how to use this chemical in the best way. Now, by signing the contract of 4 cents per clean part, he's paying only $80,000. And don't forget to do the same job with the same, even better quality. And for him, added value is $20,000. And this demonstrates, and I say this is underestimation of the potential of some practical cases. Chemical supplier is making $12,000 more, and chemical user is making or saving 20,000 US dollars. This is so-called fair sharing of added value. I believe that this example demonstrates how it is possible to make more money by selling less chemicals or using them in more efficient way. On this slide, what I said just before is summarized. You see that the win, we have a triple win situation. Why triple? In economical terms, we demonstrated that the supplier and the user have economic benefits, but in environment, of course, we reduced for 40% consumption of chemicals. That means they don't have to be used, they don't have to be transported, they will not become a waste. So environment and health, and of course, handling the chemicals will be easier because they have to handle less chemicals. And then environment is also winning situation. This case, which I repeat, is taken from the real situation, and it's underestimated, is demonstrated how using performance-oriented business model as a chemical leasing can generate a win situation for the environment and for the economy, and also for in social benefits like better working conditions and health. As I was saying, that this is taken from the reality. In this slide, you can see that during the years in cleaning metal parts, in the beginning, it was, I believe, 30, 40 years ago, we were using 754 kilograms of the solvent, sometimes very toxic solvent, to clean 100 kilograms of metal parts. With development of technology and new machines, they were able to reduce to 15 kilograms for 100 kilograms of metal part. And they stay on this level for some time. Then they decided to use chemical leasing business model, where the unit of payment, everything until this chemical leasing was based on quantity. And when they switched to chemical leasing and performance-based business model, per unit of payment was per clean part, they were able to use only 4 kilograms of solvent to clean 100 kilograms of clean metal part, which is reduction on 99.5% of chemicals. And it's not only about chemical leasing, but chemical leasing pushed the limit even further. After talking about what are the key elements of chemical leasing, we can see now what is the definition of chemical leasing. Because in the beginning, we started to work and we saw some problems. We saw that something was called chemical leasing, and it was not really chemical leasing. That's why UNIDO came out with the definition of chemical leasing, and what is involved is something you have to remember, and you need to remember, is a performance-based business model. And it shifts the focus from quantity to performance. And also, chemical leasing creates win-win situation. It's not because we like it, but we saw where it doesn't create win-win situation, it's not sustainable. Companies don't want to go to this business model if it doesn't create added value for them. But in our experience, whenever we have a good chemical leasing case, the contract is rock solid. So we have cases which are now more than 8 or 9 years up and running, and between the partners and even the owners of the companies change, but they don't change this type of contract because it brings really clear added value for everybody. Of course, during more than 10 years of working with chemical leasing, we saw a lot of different approaches, and it was really necessary to develop some sustainability criteria. And it's important for those who are going to apply for a chemical leasing award to know that there will be a sustainability criteria checklist, and all 5 criteria has to be fulfilled in order for some contract or business model to be called chemical leasing. The first criteria is that, of course, we have to have reduction of adverse impact on environment, health, energy, and resource consumption. Without that, we cannot call some case or contract or business model chemical leasing. The second point is very important. We had cases where there was a significant reduction of consumption of chemicals by substitution of chemicals, but we saw that sometimes less toxic chemical was replaced by more hazardous chemicals. That's why criteria number 2, no substitution of chemicals by substances of high risk, it's a precondition for a business model, at least for UNIDO, to be called chemical leasing. Number 3, it's more a social aspect. It has to lead to improved handling and storage of chemicals to minimize risks, because we don't want to talk only about creating profit, we also want to talk about people. And in almost all cases, if not in most of the cases, if not in all, we saw this improved handling and storage by simply sharing information between chemical supplier and user. User is more aware of the hazards related to the chemical which is used, and therefore they learn how to use it and handle it in a better way. Economic and social benefits are generated, so that's also precondition. And contract which is signed between 2 partners, if they want to be recognized as a chemical leasing, or we want to recognize it as a chemical leasing, the contract should contain the objective of continuous improvement. We don't want one sudden drop in consumption of chemicals or increase of efficiency. We want, of course, there will be quick drop in consumption, but we want this to continue to improve. And 5, of course, in order to be able to speak about this, we need to monitor and to document our results. And if it is appropriate, and if all the partners are agree with that, we can publish those results. Who are the main actors? I think from my talk, it's now clear. Without chemical supplier and producer and user, there is no chemical leasing case. And additional stakeholders, and they're mostly involved in most of the cases that we have, are equipment and plant suppliers. Sometimes chemical can be used more efficiently with the new equipment, and recycling, quality assurance, consulting companies, financial institutions, and national organizations such UNIDO. Those players can work in different models. Model A is the most simple and I would say most common. So supplier chemical sign the contract with the user of chemical. There are no other players. There is a little bit more complicated, but I would say the most realistic and the most used model is that where supplier chemicals and equipment supplier, they work together and they sell the performance to user of chemicals. And the model C, which is also present, is where series of partners create kind of consortia and have a common offer to chemical user, which is again based on performance. And last two slides is just to tell you, I think it's time to tell you that all our presentations will be available on the website of Chemical Leasing, so you will be able to go again through these slides. Here are some basic information. What is important is to see web page of Chemical Leasing and also toolkit. We created a toolkit. You can do chemical leasing alone. You don't need a consultant. It's better with consultants because they are more skilled and they know how to overcome some difficulties. But chemical leasing toolkit contains step-by-step approach how to implement chemical leasing. We organized already, UNIDO organized with the support of Austria, Germany, and Switzerland 4 chemical leasing awards. And we have a pleasure to announce, and it was announced in December, the Chemical Leasing Award 2020. And very strong political commitment is signing of joint declaration, which was signed in 2016 between UNIDO, Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. And 2 years ago, El Salvador, Peru, and Serbia joined in 2018. Just to mention, on the Chemical Leasing website and on the Chemical Leasing Toolkit's website, you can download a very simple Excel file, which is called Smart 5 Tool, where you can quantify the results. Other publications where you can find this, again, Chemical Leasing Toolkit, you can see very quick description of chemical leasing on the video of chemical leasing. And last but not least, I would like to say, a few days ago, Austrian government included chemical leasing in the program, and it is really demonstrates that it's not just a talk, it's a reality right now in one of the most developed countries in the world. So with this, I hope I demonstrated the key elements of chemical leasing, and I thank you for your attention. I think that we will have time for questions and answers.
Yes, thank you very much, Branko, for this presentation of the key elements of chemical leasing. I would like to repeat, if there are any questions, please use the chat function and we will collect them and provide answers at the end of the session. The next presentation, I have the pleasure to introduce Vojka Zadrić to you, and she will give you insights into international case studies on chemical leasing. Vojka, the floor is yours.
We have heard from Petra Branko about circular economy, about key elements of chemical leasing. The idea of this presentation is to document this presentation results, and it is very important to have in mind that circular economy cannot be realized without changing in user and supplier relationships. And also, chemical leasing is practical to support circular economy. It is also important to highlight that chemical leasing is focused on chemicals, on the effective use of chemicals, but there are really, is our experience, very, very good examples for saving of other resources. Here are some examples, some the average savings about chemicals, energy, about other resources, plus plastic packaging, that is very important these days. Also water reduction and elimination of waste. We choose to present you case studies from two sectors, from service sector and from industrial sector. These studies, both studies, case studies were awarded last year. I think the first prize, and the first one is chemical leasing in service sector. Like in circular economy, chemical leasing is not about, for example, if we are talking about this case, not about detergents, but it is about chemicals. It is about business model that can be a relationship based on performance of chemicals. And in this case, what is important, Branko was talking about it, it is unit of payment. Chemical leasing decouples payment from volume to performance-based unit of payment. In this case, this is kilogram of washed laundry. What was changed and what was improved in this case? First of all, they used to use powder detergents, but after chemical leasing model implementation, they changed to liquid detergents. They have the same cleaning properties, and they have efficient washing properties at lower temperature. Also, automatic dosing was installed, and that means efficient use of chemicals. Before, powder detergents were dosing manually. Improvements were really very good and high. Savings, reuse, that is principle of circular economy, reuse of water. At the beginning, they used to reuse only wastewater from white laundry, but during the time they introduced reverse osmosis system, and now they reuse all water. Their water footprint was dramatically dropped down. They also introduced heat recovery, and that is also one of the goals of circular economy, efficient use of energy and use of energy efficiently. They use heat recovery for water preheating from steam condensate, from dryer, also from rolls and wastewater from heat from wastewater. How it looks like, you see now, Petra mentioned it, circular economy idea is to use less of those chemicals to detoxicate the process. We have this in this case because the new liquid detergents are not hazardous according to EU regulation. So we don't have hazardous materials anymore. That is the first. Consumption of chemicals is optimized and reduced. You can see on this slide how much it is. It is about 30% lower now. Also, there is, like I mentioned, it is not only about chemicals we are doing with on chemical leasing, but also it is about other chemicals, in this case, chemical for wastewater treatment. So we have a double effect on if we are talking about chemicals. Water scarcity in this region is really a big problem, and it is really important to use it efficiently, reuse it. And what was done, you can see it is also dramatically reduced of water consumption in this case. Because wastewater is now treated by reverse osmosis and reused for washing. What's about energy savings? I have already mentioned that washing temperature is now lower. Before 90% of laundry was washed at 60 degrees, and now it is 40 degrees. So it is 20 degrees centigrade lower. Also, washing temperature for heavy stain, but that is only 5% of laundry. Temperature remains the same. It is about 80 degrees. Also very important, number of washing cycles was reduced, so energy consumption is also reduced. Recovery, I have also mentioned recovery from waste. From heat recovery. And these are results. Before chemical leasing, we are always talking about key performance indicators. So it is kilowatt hours per kilogram of washed laundry. So we always talking about key performance indicators. And it is, in this case, at the beginning, it was 1.8 kilowatt, about 1.8 kilowatt hours, and it is now about 1.5. What is about health and safety? It is very common in chemical leasing, manually dosing and automatic dosing, and people or workers get in touch with chemicals before, and after that there is no contact with chemicals. That is a really good improvement in health and safety. Also in this case it's important because it is hotels laundry. Their high season is during the summer when temperatures are high, and at 60 degrees when washing temperature is reaching 60 degrees, it is a really unpleasant working environment. But when it is 40, it is really more comfortable. What is about economy? Business is established for profit. In this case, profit of user of laundry is 250,000 euro higher than before. What's about user, a supplier? Profit is about 10% higher. We are talking about open book and chemical leasing, but suppliers are not ready to tell we have so many dollars or euros more, but we have 10%. 10% is really good results for a supplier. We also have other examples. This is a case study from Brazil. It is not only in Brazil, but this is from Brazil. It is not only about laundry, but about hygiene in whole hotel. So it is about laundry, about washing the dishes, public place hygiene and rooms and so on. And consumption of cleaning and washing chemicals per occupied room, that is the number of payment in this case. And it was before, it is 0.28 kilogram per occupied room. And it is 40% less in this hotel that is under chemical leasing than in other hotels in that chain. So it says us they are going to implement chemical leasing on all their hotels. Now chemical leasing in industry. Cleaning in metal parts was mentioned several times today because that was the beginning of chemical leasing. And it is a really, really very good example of how chemical leasing can improve business profit, the environment, health and safety, and all these things. We have sometimes problem with unit payments. In this case is case from Serbia, we cannot talk about number of cleaning parts because there are so many different metal parts, different sizes, different shapes, so we cannot count or measure surface of these parts. But in this case, we were lucky because they are working 24 hours, 7 days per week. So it is actually the unit of payment is monthly fee, but it is related to working hours of machines. So that is, in this case, that is the unit of payment. What was changed and improved? What was very important in this case? They had really, really big problems. Our idea here was to start with other oils, but we realized it was not impossible. It was not possible. But they mentioned their problems with cleaning because that was bottleneck in the process. And fortunately, Reinhard was with us, and he said, "Oh, there is really good solution for this problem." They used a very huge amount of solvent. I will show you how it looked like. But now solvents are regularly monitored and adjusted. It is important to extend lifespan of the solvent in the machine. Also now, before, as I mentioned, they got in contact, with solvents, but now it is supplied in a way that prevents evaporation to working environment. Also, waste is taken back from supply. That is also one of the principles of circular economy. And also, what is in this? They recovered this solvent. And look, these are a solvent liter per ton of products in this case, because products are very heavy. Solvent lifespan in machine was significantly prolonged. Solvent is recovery on site, and supplier takes the waste back. So per ton of product, they used about 75 liters, but now, and Branko mentioned it, it is constantly dropped down. At the moment, it is not. It was in 2017. I don't know. Maybe it is better than this now. It's less than 10 liters per kilogram. So these are really, really good results. Also about waste. Before chemical leasing, in waste there were content of solvent was 95%, and of course there is recovered solvent, and now there is about 5% of hazardous waste in hazardous solvent in waste. Oh, this was also a very, very big problem in this case, because we talk about chemical leasing, very often we are talking about maintenance costs. In this case, because of solvent acidity, machine parts corroded very heavily, and this is situation after maybe 2 months of using new parts. Now there is no corrosion of metal parts. That is really huge improvement in maintenance. But not only in this case, there are really good cases regarding maintenance costs. Also, productivity was improved. It is also a case in many cases. The time cleaning of time for cleaning cycle is reduced. Also, more parts are packed in these baskets for cleaning. These baskets go to the machine to be cleaned, to clean parts. And there is no time because there is no exchange of solvent. They had to change solvents every week. They use 300 liters per machine, and they had to change it every week. Can you imagine how much of solvent was wasted? And what happened? In chemical leasing, also training of workers is very important. I have to mention it because usually they are not used to chemicals management and all hazardous problems with chemicals, but in chemical leasing we always have training of workers, and these are pictures from trainings from 2013, I think. This case study now is 7 years old, yeah, and they are really very glad with this. So the workers were trained on efficient chemicals management and of course appropriate use of equipment. Cleaning system is closed. That is very important for health and safety in this case. And employees are protected from solvent vapors. I also would like to highlight that there sometimes workers are reluctant to use new approaches, new equipment and everything, but at the end of the day, like in this case, they approach us to say us, thank you, it is really good, and this is one of these cases that really, it is really a good feeling when they approach to tell you that they are workers. I'm talking about managers are always glad because they get some money, but workers are glad with working conditions and something new. And in this case, we have a 30% cost reduction for solvents, but savings are not related to, of course, are related to solvents, but the most of savings are not related to solvents. It is to waste export, to maintenance, and it is for this, in this case, annual savings are 100,000 euros per year. That is a really good result, and at the end of the day, why chemical leasing? We already see this slide. We have less consumption of chemical, materials, water, and energy. We documented it, I think I can say that. Less hazardous chemicals, very important. Less regeneration. Also less negative effects to the environment and health and safety, and of course related to it, less risks. More added values, more profit, more quality, more surprises possibility. In this case, we see they take back waste and they are responsible for it. And also more incentives for use and recycled chemicals. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wojka, for providing this overview on case studies from several countries, from several industry sectors. And sure, if there are more questions about different other case studies, we can then provide further information after the last presentation. It has already been mentioned several times that there will be the Global Chemical Leasing Award in autumn this year, and Luis will provide you now with some information about this award, how to apply. Further details will then be available in the second module of the webinar, which will follow at 11 o'clock this morning. But first of all, Luis will provide an overview that you see the general application schemes and how this award will work. Luis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Reinhard. Hi, everyone. As Reinhard mentioned, I will be presenting, talking about the Chemical Leasing Award 2020. As Petra mentioned in her presentation, UNIDO promotes resource efficiency, and since the mid-2000s, UNIDO has been promoting chemical leasing. So since 2015, all UNIDO has been trying to promote and move forward circular economy, and since chemical leasing is a circular economy business model, since 2010, UNIDO is trying to recognize all these companies and consultants and different organizations are trying to implement the business model. The award intends to showcase commitment to innovative and sustainable business models for the chemical management, and what it looks forward is what it wants is to acknowledge the best practices and very good cases that we have on chemical leasing and performance-based business models. So we are very happy to inform you that we will have this year the Global Chemical Leasing Award 2020, which will recognize sustainable business performance-based business models. As Petra mentioned, this will take place in Bonn, Germany in the week of the 5 and to 9 of November. We will confirm the date in the following days. We want to thank also our partners who are helping us to co-organize the Chemical Leasing Award, which are the governments of Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, as well as FEC. I would like to highlight that the application period is open until 15th of May. And if you want more information, you can visit our website, chemicalleasing.org. Quickly, I would like to mention about the award categories and the special recognitions that we will have for this year's edition. We will have the main categories, which are similar to the ones of 2018, case studies, which are for companies, users and suppliers already implementing the model. We will have also the innovation category, which are for case studies that have proven a state-of-the-art way of implementing the business model. And we also have the research category, which will be for all those activities, development activities that can bring forward chemical leasing. We also are really happy to have special awards. One is for women-led initiatives. We are really happy to recognize all those initiatives where the model is being implemented or it was led, the activities on chemical leasing, so performance-based business model by women. And also to startups, to all those entrepreneurs and everyone that is trying to promote and move forward the performance-based business models as chemical leasing. And lastly, but not least, we will have also a special jury recognition, which is what we call champions, to all those who have a long-standing who are being implementing the business model for a while now, and that are very good partners with us for the last couple of years. So if you're interested to apply or you want to help someone to apply, first we have here a small image on how you can do it. First, you need to, if you're a company, user or supplier, you need to identify whether you are already doing a performance-based business model like chemical leasing. identify which process in which you are doing this, and or see the potential processes. Later we will discuss how to do this. And tomorrow too, there's a module of implementation which will help you to recognize this in order for the first step to apply. And if you're a consultant, you can go to companies and identify if they're already implementing or which processes they could implement the business model. Then check in the website all the background information and evaluation criteria that we have available in links we will provide in the following slide. Then step 3, you need to complete the forms, the application form, the checklist. To the extent possible. Later today we will have also a presentation on how to fill in the application forms. We really interested in you showcasing the benefits that the business model brings, environmentally, economically, and social. And finally, to finish with your application, you send the application form, the evaluation criteria, and relevant information such as the safety data sheets of the chemicals involved in the processes or in the case you are applying with, to the email address chemical-leasing@unido.org. It's important to mention that all this information is kept confidential. So, and then this, any additional information that you consider, such as paper or anything that you can consider relevant, that will bring, that will give a lift to your case. Then, just as a final thing, as important links, you can find the information of the Global Chemical Leasing Award and then chemical-leasing.org/Global Chemical Leasing Award 2020. There you can find application forms for all the categories, as well as the indication on how to apply. You will also find the background information, which is very important that you read, and the indicators checklist that we will also today show you how to fill in. So this is from my side. Thank you very much. So I think I now pass to Reinhard, who we will continue with the questions.
Yeah.
Please note, the
Here, Jena. And we received several questions. Some of these questions directly concern chemical leasing, and we will go to our
please note, the meeting is being recorded.
Concern technical details of the case studies, and I think we will provide answers by email, because this is then a very specific technical question and not a question specifically related to chemical leasing, and therefore it might be not so much in the interest of all the participants. So for the questions on chemical leasing, we saw several questions going in the direction of the calculations that Branko presented. And here there is a major question about how to manage the investment costs that might come up to do process optimization. And you might give an additional answer on this, how typically sharing between benefits, sharing between costs happens, and what's going on with investment costs.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. First of all, I'd like to say that the case that I presented is a very simplified one, just in order to stress the main features. Of course, the contract between parties is never simple. There are so many details to be considered, and one of the details and very important issue is investment costs. Sometimes companies can optimize just by sharing know-how, but Vojka presented a case where we had investment in recycling or distillation unit, etc. Of course, this investment will extend the payback period, but it doesn't have to do, it's not completely directly related to performance-based unit of payment. It will just be included in the contract over a long period, some period of time, where the partners will agree what will be the share of this cost related to investment in the unit of payment. For example, in this case of SafeChem, they agreed to lease also the...
we have distributor who was to be in them, and distributor credited. Contract was signed for 5 years, and unit of payment was higher than only chemicals, because cost of equipment was also added to the unit of payment.
But what is important to say is that overall the cost for the user and for the supplier were lower, and the payback period was calculated to be, I would say, in the range of 5 years.
Yeah.
In this case, 5 years.
I think that's a particular situation here for the case of these metal parts cleaning. We have this situation of additional investments in several cases, and I think the mechanism behind is that both partners, the user of the chemical and the supplier of the chemical, record their efforts to realize the process optimization. And then these efforts are taken into consideration in what we call fair sharing of the benefits. Because benefits occur because processes are optimized. And now it depends who is getting which part of the cake of these benefits. And there, typically in the contracts, it is foreseen that the different efforts of the different partners are reflected. And investment costs of one partner might be one of the shares or one of the important shares of these.
I would like to add maybe to this concrete example that the user had a strong incentive to invest in the equipment because their chemicals management and usage of chemicals before chemical leasing contract was really not sustainable. So they would invest it anyway. They had a help of their chemical supplier who helped them invest in the right way, in the right equipment, tailored to their needs. So it's in a case where we have this knowledge sharing and a contact between two partners, it helps also to get the right investment, because we who work with companies, we witness a lot of wrong investment, a huge investment in a wrong equipment, which is either oversized or not tailored to the company. So getting this privileged partnership between supplier and user helped to determine the right investment. In this case, we can say that the investment was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And what we also say that very often chemical leasing goes hand in hand with equipment improvement, could also be equipment leasing or this assistance, so in assistance in purchasing the right equipment. So we see this very often.
Yeah, it is also lubrication of PET packaging glass, for example. It is also about investment. But in this case, Ecolab is producer of chemical, but also producer of equipment for that. And they also practically lease for some of this equipment to the supplier.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question that came up goes in the direction of the supplier of the chemicals. And again, the basis is Branko's calculation. And so two questions where they have. One, I think just for clarification, what is considered as fixed costs? And the second question, which is more complex, saying if you reduce the quantity of a chemical produced, then the price per quantity goes up due to scale effects. That means you consume less energy, you consume less raw material, so you have scale effects, and the cost per produced unit of chemicals might go up. Maybe, Branko, you can just give some comments to these two parts of the questions what are fixed costs and what about the scaling effects?
Fixed cost, the typical definition of the fixed cost are the costs which do not depend on the volume of production. So you produce 1 kilo or 100 tons, you will have the same cost to pay, I don't know, some premises, etc. So it's not what is not depending on the volume. The other question is more complicated, and I would say whoever asked this question is right. Price per unit is bigger, but the whole effect by reducing the variable cost, by reducing volume of production, largely overweights this small increase per unit which is paid. And this can be seen from this from the slide that I showed, because you can calculate what is the cost per unit. It will be slightly higher, but you can see at the end of the day that you have a net profit by decreasing the production, by reducing more
the inputs to the production.
Yes, the inputs, because you are producing now 40% less chemicals, you will reduce your energy consumption, maybe not for 40%, but you will reduce it. You will reduce cost of raw materials for 40%, maybe transport cost will be, there are so many details, but for the sake of simplicity, we show this. Maybe the added value will not be $22,000, but it will be between $15,000 and $20,000.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is very important that we clarify. This is just an example, a model calculation, and practice shows it's more complicated, but the main effects are still valid in practice. It's a profitable business model for both sides. There is another set of questions that addresses number of chemicals, number of suppliers. And I think maybe we can discuss this all. Basically, it goes in the direction, if one supplier has several chemicals, does this business model work as well? If we have several suppliers with several chemicals, does the business model work again? So how is the situation here? And maybe from own experience, I might give a quick start into this before we elaborate it in more detail. So the most simple version is, of course, one supplier, one chemical. It as well works very good if we have one supplier, several chemicals, but still we have two partners. Once we have several suppliers and one user, it gets more complex due to confidentiality requirements, due to quality requirements, but it still can work if the chemicals are used in different processes. If we have a situation that we have several suppliers with the same chemical all going into one process, that means we have a full competitive situation, then chemical leasing becomes extremely difficult, and we would not recommend to do this as a starting point. This is just a brief summary. I would give it to the round whether you agree from your experiences, from the case studies, but I think this is the summary explanation on this kind of.
Yeah, actually we have one case study from Egypt. It is about surface protection. We have one producer of phosphating chemicals, releasing the phosphating chemicals, and we have electrophoresis and top coat, powder top coats. We have 3 producers, 1 user, and we have chemical leasing. That is possible, yes. But more than one suppliers of the same chemical, it doesn't work. If we have to implement chemical leasing on one line with one supplier, it is important to mention. Yeah, good question. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm looking now on our colleagues from the technical side whether further questions have occurred. I think principally it is clear, even if you have questions later after the webinar, you have the email address, you can send it. We have a hotline for chemical leasing questions, so you will receive answers anyway. Just when we see something precise coming in, then this round might be in a position to answer.
I don't know if we have time, but I see here one question from a gentleman from Zimbabwe. In case of coating industry, this may mean product quality improvement in order to increase coverage per square meter in case of painting works. This may increase cost per unit, and reduction in volumes may also result in large apportionment of fixed costs. How we can go around this? And I think that in a coating industry, because by chance we are coming from coating industry, most of the improvements and optimizations is coming from application of paints, not the product itself. Not the product. Sometimes it can involve increase of quality of product, but in most cases, inefficient application of paints is the reason for overconsumption. Therefore, I think that with the same product, by sharing knowledge of the more efficient application, we can go around this. But of course, I cannot answer what if we are talking about completely different products, one low quality and one very high quality. It depends, but
it is not.
It's our experience in paint industry is that I repeat, the benefits are coming from application, not from changing product itself.
I also understand the question that the more coat you apply, the better is the quality, which is not always the case.
Product quality, I maybe the gentleman, I think it's time to say that we will, the question that we unfortunately cannot answer, and we are really lucky to have so many questions, they will be answered by mail. Please send us your questions, and we would be more than happy to answer to those questions if we can.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Branko. I would say with this, we leave this webinar right now, and we would like to announce the second module of the webinar that will start in about 1 hour 15 minutes. And for those who attend, they will receive details about the award, about the application procedure, and also the differentiation for the different forms of the award, what you have to consider. And it's also worth to mention the third module of the webinar, what will go into the details of implementation and give you contractual requirements in more detail, sustainability requirements. It will show you a step-by-step procedure for the full implementation, and this third module will take place tomorrow. And so another opportunity for those that have further questions and want to go further in details to attend this third module of the webinar tomorrow. I think if nothing urgent occurs now, we will close this first module of the webinar, and I would like to thank all participants. I hope you could understand well. The technical quality was sufficient, and of course we are looking forward to many applications for the Chemical Leasing Award and to your personal success story of applying chemical leasing. That means with this we close this webinar, and as said, for those that want to go further into details, the next webinar module will be open in 1 hour 15 minutes. Thank you very much.